All right, so we're going to go ahead and call the Senate Committee on Revenue to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Cruz Crawford. Senator Dunyate. Senator Steinbeck.
Here.
Senator Stone. Chair Neal.
All right, welcome to Senate Revenue. This is going to be, we're not going to have a lot of bills, we'll probably have like 40 bills or so. So just a quick introduction for myself. I have chaired this committee for 3 sessions, and I have also chaired 2 sessions on the Assembly side, but I've served on revenue for 8 sessions. So it's just been my bailiwick committee. Love revenue, love trying to figure out how to raise revenue, even if folks don't want to raise it, but still worth the effort. So I am going to, before we get into the adoption of the committee rules, I'm going to have members introduce themselves and staff introduce themselves. So we'll do committee first, and then we'll go to staff. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to work from vice chair, so I'm going to go to my right. And when you introduce yourself, talking about how long you've served, what committee you're on, or how long you've been on this committee, and one fun fact about yourself. All right, Senator Dunyate.
Thank you so much, Chair. And good afternoon. I'm State Senator Fabian Dunyate, representing Senate District 10 in central Las Vegas. Was not born in Las Vegas, but I was raised there for the majority of my life. Was elected in 2022 formally and was appointed in 2021. This is my 3rd legislative session, my 2nd one serving on Senate Revenue, so I'm just very excited to serve as a vice chair again with our chair. And then one fun fact. See, the problem is when you're put first, you know, it takes time to think of your fun fact. My fun fact, I've shared this before. I've taken DJ lessons, and it hasn't been really successful, but I make good playlists. How about that? Let's take that. I'll turn it back.
Senator Stone.
Thank you, Madam Chair and colleagues. It's great to serve with all of you on this committee. I'm Jeff Stone, representing District 20, which is part of Henderson. It's a pretty large district. It goes northerly all the way to Mesquite and southerly all the way to Laughlin. So it's a pretty large, gigantic area. I also serve on Health and Human Services with my colleague here, Senator Dunyate, and serve on the Budget Committee. So I'm going to be very busy with numbers. So a fun fact about myself. I love music also, and I have my playlists, and my favorite artist is Luther Vandross. So if you come to my office, you're going to hear Luther Vandross playing all the time. So that's my fun fact.
Wow. Luther Vandross, huh?
Yeah.
That was my favorite when I was 12. All right.
I'm a little older than you.
Okay, so now I will go to Senator Cruz Crawford.
Thank you so much, Chair. Senator Cruz Crawford from Senate District 1 in North Las Vegas. I am a freshman senator, but I'm excited to be here with Revenue and Economic Development. As an educator for over 20 years, I feel like we are always training our next workforce, and those go hand in hand. Fun fact, I am a speed reader. This is true. This is not, I said I was going to use ChatGPT to come up with a fun fact, but this is true. I took a speed reading class in middle school and can read student books. I like to read the books that my students are reading. I read Old Yeller in 34 minutes. So that is one of the things I like to do to connect with my students. And I guess it is also going to be very helpful in this role. So thank you.
Thank you. Senator Steinbeck.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is John Steinbeck. I'm a freshman senator. I was just elected from District 18 in Clark County, so that's the northwest side of the Las Vegas Valley. I just retired from the fire department, so that was after almost 35 years with the department. Still love fire and EMS, but grateful to be here. This is my first time, obviously, as a freshman on this committee or any other committee. So I look forward to serving in this capacity. And easy, boring, fun fact, though, I love to ski. So love to go out skiing anytime I get a chance.
Thank you for that. So now we will go to fiscal staff. Mr. Tower.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Christian Tower. I'm a Deputy Fiscal Analyst with the Fiscal Analysis Division. And this is my second time that I staff the Senate Committee on Revenue and Economic Development. Before that, during the 2021 session, I was on the budget side of the Fiscal Analysis Division, dealing with public and behavioral health. And before that, I was a committee manager to the Assembly Committee of Health and Human Services during the 2019 session. Fun fact, you may have heard it already, I have a strong German accent. So I grew up in Germany, studied there, and the fun fact is that during the time when I studied there, I served in a different legislature, namely in Berlin in the German Bundestag.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nakamoto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Michael Nakamoto. I serve as Chief Principal Deputy Fiscal Analyst with the Fiscal Analysis Division. I get to sit on the end. I don't know if that's a promotion or not. This is my 10th session with LCB Fiscal. It is my second session as the head of the tax team, so I work with Mr. Tower in staffing the Senate Committee on Revenue and Economic Development, and then with my other staff on my right, who staff the Assembly Committee on Revenue, and then on the Economic Forum and other things that we are responsible for. The chair didn't like my fun fact, and she didn't like my not fun fact either. So I came up with a new one on the fly. I also like music to the point where if there is going to be a presentation on a certain bill relating to digital goods, there may be some props that are supplied by me. In the form of 8 tracks and things like that. But I also do love going to concerts, and as I've been traveling down to Las Vegas more and more often, I always make it a point to go to a concert while I'm there for somebody random.
Now I feel bad. You could have kept your fact. All right. So, Ms. Powers.
Thank you, Chair. I am Susanna Powers, Deputy Fiscal Analyst. I am part of Mr. Nakamoto's tax team. This is my second session, and I staff Assembly Committee on Revenue. Oh, and fun fact, I grew up in Finland.
All right. And Ms. Owens.
Haley Owens for the record. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. This is my first session with the Fiscal Analysis Division of the LCB. I serve as an economist in support of the tax team in the Fiscal Division. My fun fact is I'm trying to get into bird watching, but it's going very slowly because they all sound the same and many of them look the same. So thank you.
Interesting. Okay, so next we'll go over to our wonderful staff that's going to help us with our maintaining this committee. So, Connie, Ms. Summers?
Yes. I'm Connie Summers. This is my second session as secretary for this committee. I was born here in Carson, raised in Tahoe, did a lot of skiing up there, so I can show you around if you ever need to be shown around. I started my career as a secretary for the FBI in D.C. I went on to work for a law firm. I was a legal assistant and a paralegal for a public law and policy section group. And I retired from law firm management before I came back here to Nevada. My fun fact is I worked as a personal chef. Thank you. Happy to be here. Hope I can help.
Personal chef. Nice. All right, so we will go to Miss Mervin Randy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Randy Mervin. This is my very first session managing the Revenue and Economic Development Committee. Fun fact about me, I trained for the Los Angeles Marathon, so that was a lot of fun.
Wow. Okay. It's really interesting. All right. Is it Boyce?
Boyce, yes. Hello, I'm Tyler Boyce, and like Connie, I'm also a committee secretary for Revenue and Economic Development. This is my first time in the Senate. This is my second legislative session. I was in the Assembly last time with Ways and Means. So hello again, Christian and Michael. And fun fact about me. I consider myself first and foremost a gamer and a game designer. I graduated with my Master's of Science in Games and Playable Media from the University of California, Santa Cruz. Published my first indie game, Nameless Hill, along with a team of fellow graduate students there. And just love doing narrative design and quest design. So that said, I'm also happy to be here on the tax committee. So.
I have so many questions because I'm trying to figure out like how did you make it into revenue and you're a game designer? Like, okay.
Good with numbers, I guess.
All right. Wow. Super diverse fun facts. Michael, I feel like you should share your other fun facts that you felt I discriminated against. But it actually, I do. I feel bad. Would you like to share, Michael? Because I don't want you to hold that in.
Well, for the record, Michael Nakamoto with the Fiscal Analysis Division. I had a fun fact and a not fun fact. My not fun fact is that I went to Italy and got COVID and got to spend the entire quarantine period in an Airbnb in Bologna, which is not a fun fact. Except for the fact that the food is okay, but I couldn't taste it. But I guess that's not fun either. My fun fact is that I am a baseball fan. I have been to a regular season Major League Baseball game in 32 different stadiums, of which 20 of them are active. And I'm hoping for several more this year.
All right. See, very interesting. So I will wrap up the fun facts with, I'm on a weird trajectory on, my algorithm has me on Pakistani dramas. It's actually a guilty pleasure within the Indian community. I have some really close Indian friends that tell me that it's the secret pleasure to watch them. They're amazing. I'm on my 7th show. And I just started in the summer. But before that, I was doing Telugu, Tamil, and Hindi. And then somehow I ended up in Pakistan. I'm going to stay there for a while. So that's my fun fact. That's my go-to. All right. So with that, we can now get to actual business. Because members, you all have your committee rules. We have to go through the process of adopting our committee rules. You should have them all in front of you. And if you know that you want the digital copies, please respond to the email that you received so that you're not burdened down with paper copies. I'm a paper person, but we will send you the digital version so you can have that and you don't have all the paper. I want to, now that we've done our fun fact, like to welcome the audience members here in Carson City as well in Las Vegas and all those who are watching online or listening through the internet. If you have not done so already, mute your electronic devices. We are going to adopt the committee rules, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Tower.
Thank you, Chair. Christian Tower, Deputy Fiscal Analyst with the Fiscal Analysis Division for the record. Committee members should have the committee rules in front of them as a paper copy. They're also uploaded on NELIS in the Nevada Electronic Legislative Information System, and paper copies are also available for the general public at the entrance there. The committee rules are the same as they were during the 2023 session. And Chair, a question to you is, would you like me to go through the different rules that are spelled out, or would you like to go directly to a motion to approve the rules? And I turn it back to the chair.
Okay, members, we're going to go ahead and adopt. I would like a first for the adoption of the Senate Revenue Committee rules.
Chair, I motion to adopt the committee rules as given.
Okay, so I have a first from Senator Cruz Crawford. Second
Second.
from Senator Doñate. All in favor of adopting the committee rules, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed to adoption of the committee rules? Seeing no opposition, the committee rules are adopted unanimously. And now we will move on to the revenue manual. So we're going to have our presentation on the revenue reference manual by Nakamoto and Tower. Yeah, I skipped that. Yeah, we can do that first. All right, so before we get into the revenue reference manual, we're going to do the presentation of the committee brief. So staff is going to do the presentation from the dais, so instead of going to the seats, and so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Tower.
Thank you, Chair Neal. Again, for the record, my name is Christian Tower with the Fiscal Analysis Division. The policy brief is uploaded on NELIS for the general public. It is also in form of paper copies on the desk of the committee members, and for the general public, there are paper copies at the entrance door. The committee brief is 35 pages long. I will not go through these page by page, but instead concentrate on what information can be found and where it can be found in the brief. On page 3 of the committee brief, if you would open it, you will find a table on top in section 1. And that table is listing the measures referred to and approved by the Senate Committee on Revenue and Economic Development during the 2023 legislative session. The table also contains the number of bills reported out to the governor or filed with the Secretary of State. And you can see that a total of 38 bills and resolutions were referred to the committee. 32 of these measures were reported out of committee, and 18 measures were reported to the governor. 17 bills were signed into law immediately. Senate Bill 429 was vetoed by the governor on June 9, 2023. However, its provisions were included in Senate Bill 1 of the 35th special session, which was approved by the governor. And that gives me a good segue to go to section 1 of the brief in front of you, which provides tax legislation enacted during the 2023 legislative session. So in this section, you'll find a summary of the most recent legislation enacted during the 2023 session of relevance to this committee. Of note is, though, that this summary goes beyond the bills that were referred to and passed out of the Senate Committee on Revenue and Economic Development during the 2023 session. It includes any tax and economic policy relevant measure that was enacted during the 2023 session. This overview of the last session's relevant enactments begins on page 3 and ends on page 17, and is the part of the policy brief that is meant to provide committee members with an easy access to information on the most recent relevant changes and decisions relating to subject matters of concern to this committee. For example, if you would like to know what Senate Bill 429 of the 2023 session was about, the bill that was voted by the governor, but passed out of this committee, or Senate Bill 1 of the 35th session, 35th special session, you can turn to page 11 to find a summary of Senate Bill 429 in the subsection on bills regarding tax credits, exemptions, abatements, and postponements. You can find there that Senate Bill 429 requires that certain abatement of taxes for new and expanding businesses, which will have 50 or more employees, can only be approved by the Governor's Office of Economic Development if the applying business provides at least 12 weeks of family and medical leave at a rate of at least 55% of the regular wage to an employee who has been with the business for at least 1 year. You will also see there underneath in bold the information that Senate Bill 429 was vetoed by the governor, but that its provisions were included and approved as part of Senate Bill 1 of the 35th special session. And directly underneath, you find the summary of Senate Bill 1 of the 35th special session, which was the Major League Stadium project bill. That is just an example of how we hope you may use the policy brief and find it helpful. Generally, Section 2 on legislation enacted during the 2023 session is structured according to subsections. I already mentioned the subsection on economic incentive programs starting on page 11, but the section starts with a subsection on page 4 on bills regarding state revenue and taxes. It includes a summary of all new taxes and material changes to taxes enacted during the 2023 session. For example, the first bill you find listed here, Senate Bill 452, revises the distribution of the governmental service tax to require that 100% of the revenue generated by the tax is deposited in the State Highway Fund, beginning fiscal year 2024. Prior to Senate Bill 452, 25% of these proceeds were deposited in the State General Fund. There are several more subsections in the policy brief, such as on bills regarding technical and administrative changes from page 8 on, bills regarding tax credits, exemption, abatements, and postponements from page 11 on, bills regarding state and local economic development from page 12 on, and finally, bills regarding local government taxes and revenues from page 15 on. On page 19, you find a table detailing the jurisdiction of the committee as laid out in the Senate standing rules. The table shows the respective chapters in the Nevada Revised Statutes that fall under the jurisdiction of the committee. And at the time when we finished this document, the Senate standing rules for the 83rd session, for this session, weren't yet public. So we modeled this on the Senate standing rules from the previous session, the 2023 session, but by now the Senate standing rules for this session are out and the jurisdiction of this committee is the same as during the previous session. So in other words, the table you find here is valid also for this session. In section 4 of the policy brief on page 21, you find a list of important committee deadlines. You see these also in the 2025 session calendar on the last page of the committee brief on page 35. Section 5 includes topics that may be addressed by the committee. It lists bills already referred to the committee on page 21. From page 22 on, it provides a list of bill draft requests that, given their description in the of NRS title, appear to be relevant or potentially relevant for the committee. Of note is that this is not a comprehensive list because BDRs, until they are introduced and turn into bills, are confidential. So we could only judge this by their title and by their designation to the relevant chapters in the NRS. On page 27, you find a directory of committee members and staff. On page 28, you find a directory of other tax-related relevant contacts in the state of Nevada. And that concludes my presentation, Chair. Thank you.
Members, are there any questions on the committee brief? Seeing none, Mr. Nakamoto?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Nakamoto with the Fiscal Analysis Division for the record. If I just wanted to add one additional comment to Mr. Tower's presentation relating to the BDR list that begins on page 22 of the policy brief. This is, as Mr. Tower noted, a list that we put together based on the title or the subject matter, if the bill has actually been pre-filed and introduced at the time that this has been prepared. Items or topics that are potentially of relevance to this committee, but at the same time, it may go beyond that. In a sense, this is a personal tracking as well for your staff, keeping an eye on bills in other committees. If you go through this, you're going to see a lot of bills relating to things like cannabis or gaming regulation, which have to do, are primarily in the jurisdiction of the judiciary committees. But these are of possible interest or relevance to us in our other role as staff to the Economic Forum, because we would be tracking potential revenue effects. And then there are a couple of other bills in here that we're tracking that are more relevant to other job duties relating to the Fiscal Analysis Division. For example, there is a BDR in relating to the fiscal note process, of which we are administering. But we thought that this was a useful document for you as legislators to have also, so you can see the kinds of things that we're looking at that kind of are within the jurisdiction and the scope of the committee, but also kind of go outside of that, just to show how a lot of the revenue issues that you'll be looking at or that we deal with are touched in a lot of different committees besides this one. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that. So seeing no questions, we will go ahead and now move to the Revenue Reference Manual. And I will turn the microphone back over to Mr. Tower.
Thank you, Chair Neal. Christian Tower for the record with the Fiscal Analysis Division. The Revenue Reference Manual is a publication that is updated and put out by the Fiscal Analysis Division every 2 years right before the legislative session. Its aim is really for legislators to provide a reference in the sense that if you read a bill or in your committee meeting and there's certain tax or revenue source is mentioned and you would like to have some more background or details on that revenue source, the idea is that you can open the reference manual, find the section regarding that specific tax source or revenue source in the table of contents, then go to the section and have a relatively easy and quick read, and hopefully there find the information you are looking for on that specific revenue source. And so that is really how it is supposed to be used, or hopefully be used. And I will give now a brief overview on what you can find in there in the Revenue Reference Manual. If you open the manual to the table of contents, you will see that it is structured according to sections. So section 1 provides really on a high level structured overview on appropriations and revenues in the state by providing appropriations and revenue charts. Section 2 is really the heart of the reference manual. It lists many of the most important revenue sources of the state of Nevada according to tax groups, such as sales tax or gaming taxes, and provides information on individual taxes, so that, for example, if you want to know more about the sales and use tax in the state, you can turn to the page 19 of section 2 of the reference revenue manual and find information there. Section 3 provides tax legislation history, and this is structured according to session. So this is an account of what changes were enacted by the legislature relevant to taxation and economic development in each of the legislative sessions since 1979. And you see there on page 235, you find information on what changes and relevant tax legislations and economic development legislations were enacted during the 2023 session. In section 4, you find useful taxation information, including a tax glossary and a list of publications by the Department of Taxation, which we were able to put in here thanks to the help and cooperation of our good friends at the Department of Taxation. In Section 5, you find economic incentive programs, so tax exemptions, abatement, deferrals, and tax credits. In Section 6, you find information on local government finance issues, and in Section 7, you find information on fiscal note processes. So overall, the entire Revenue Reference Manual has 369 pages. And I will, of course, not present these in any detail. Instead, I will try to give a brief overview on the structure of the manual and specifically try to give committee members an idea as to what information can be found where in the manual. We also made some changes to the Revenue Reference Manual when compared to the previous editions. And I will point out these changes while going through the structure of the publication. So first, part 1. This is really, as mentioned, a high-level overview on appropriations and revenues in the state of Nevada. And you find the first chart on page 3, and that illustrates general fund appropriations by state function. And this is probably a chart that's important for the vast majority of committee work here in the Nevada Legislature. But given that we're here, the Revenue Committee, I'm quickly turning the page to page 4, which is really listing the heart of what this committee's work is about, namely the chart that illustrates unrestricted general fund revenues here in Nevada. And these are the actuals, so the actual collections in fiscal year 2024 by tax. So in blue, you see that the state sales tax accounts for 30.5%, so just under a third of Nevada's unrestricted general fund revenue. The gaming percentage fee tax in green accounts for 15.9%. The modified business taxes, also in green, for 14.1%. And the insurance premium taxes for 11.6%. Then you see a number of other taxes in the 0.8% to under 6.1% range. Cigarette tax, business license fees, liquor tax, transportation connection excise tax, real property transfer tax, and live entertainment taxes. And then you find a category of other taxes and non-tax revenues, which are made up by a multitude of smaller taxes, fees, and other revenues. Starting on page 5, you find a table that contains a comprehensive list of all revenue sources of the unrestricted general fund. The table is, without footnotes, 5 pages long. In the columns, it includes fiscal year 2022, fiscal year 2023, and fiscal year 2024 actual revenues collected from each revenue source, as well as the fiscal year 2025, 26, and 27 revenue forecast. This forecast was approved on the Economic Forum meeting on December 2nd, 2024, and is the basis for the governor's executive budget pursuant to NRS Chapter 353. If you look at the top of the page, of page 5, you see mining taxes. And as you can see in the table, there are no revenues listed for the upcoming biennium on mining taxes. And the reason for this is that both the net proceeds of mineral tax and the gold and silver excise taxes are, since July 1st, 2023, allocated to support the state education fund. Right underneath, you see the state revenue portion of the sales and use taxes, which are, as mentioned in relation to the chart on page 4 already, the biggest revenue source here in the state. Underneath the sales taxes, you find the gaming taxes, beginning with a percentage fee tax, the second biggest revenue source for the general fund. And you find there also, on the same page, on page 5, a section that sums up the total gaming fees and taxes that go into the general fund. Continuing with major revenue sources, you find different modified business tax revenues on page 6, and the insurance premium tax listed on page 7. Page 8 and 9 primarily include minor revenue sources and list the tax credits taken against certain revenue sources. At the bottom of page 9, you also find the total general fund revenue before and after tax credits. So while part 1, the charts and the table, are meant to provide a general overview of tax revenues, part 2, as mentioned, the heart of the revenue reference manual from page 15 on, drills down to the level of individual taxes. The sections on individual taxes in part 2 provide information on who administers the tax, who levies the tax, who is a taxpayer, what is the tax rate, and how are the revenues generated by the tax distributed. They also provide information on the history of the individual taxes and how they have changed over time. So if you open again the table of contents, you see that section 2 has several subsections. You see here sales taxes grouped up under subsection A, gaming taxes under subsection B, property taxes under subsection C, excise taxes under subsection D, fuel and motor vehicle taxes under E, and other taxes and fees under F. So I will not go in detail through all these subsections, but as an example on how this revenue reference manual can be used, I take the sales taxes. So if we turn to page 19, quickly turn there, committee members can find detailed information on the state 2% sales and use tax. You will find here that the tax is collected by the Department of Taxation and that the tax rate is 2%. Also, information is provided in the table and the numbers you see here on the revenues generated by the tax in fiscal year 2023 and fiscal year 2024, as well as the percentage these revenues make up as total, as a proportion of the total general fund revenues. Underneath that, you find historical legal information on the acts that created and changed the tax through the years and where to find the respective statutes in the NRS. So this is the basic structure according to which Section 2 provides information on all the individual specific revenue sources here listed in the reference manual. So if you continue on page 21, committee members find information on the basic city-county relief tax. From page 22 on the supplemental city-county relief tax. And these are both taxes that have a certain commission for the state general fund, which you see in the table listed there on each of the pages for these taxes. But mainly, these taxes go to local governments according to a complex formula that is prescribed in statutes. From page 24 on, you find information on the local school support tax, also called the LSST. And these are the statewide mandated sales taxes. From page 25 on, you find information on the county optional taxes. On page 27, you find a list of these optional taxes by county. I turn now to page 28, which is, I believe, a good summary table, and which is new to the manual. In previous editions of the reference manual, we would show from page 28 on a map of the state of Nevada with all counties and their respective combined tax rates. However, for this year's reference manual, we decided to do something new and hope you will find it helpful. From page 28 on, you find a breakdown of all sales tax rates by county. The areas in darker gray signify the mandated statewide sales taxes that combine to a rate of 6.85%. Underneath the dark gray area, you find the county optional taxes listed. So that is just as an example on how to use or how this reference manual can be used and hopefully in a helpful way. I will go now much shorter, in a much shorter time, through the other sections. In Section B, you will find gaming taxes, with the most significant one in terms of revenues described on page 35, the gaming percentage fee tax. If you browse through this section until page 42, you see further gaming taxes listed and described. There's also a novelty here in this year's reference manual. New in this section is, when compared to previous editions of the revenue reference manual, is that we have this time also included information on unredeemed wagering vouchers on page 42. Section C of Part 2 from page 43 on details property taxes. The property tax administered by the Department of Taxation, levied by counties, cities, towns, and special districts on real property and mobile homes, is described from page 45 on. This section includes a discussion of rates, statutory limitations on property tax rate, and of partial abatements. On page 47, you find information on the distribution of property tax revenues to local governments, the State Education Fund, and the State Bond Fund. On page 49, committee members will find information on the net proceeds of mineral tax. On page 50, you find information on the collected revenue and distribution of this tax to the State Bond Fund, local governments, and State Education Fund. Section D from page 53 on details excise taxes. Section E from page 65 on details fuel and motor vehicle taxes. And I'm also going to point out there that there are two novelties there. We have included a table on page 70 showing current and historical tax rates from fuel tax indexing in Clark and Washoe County, and this relates to the motor vehicle fuel taxes. And on page 72 and 73, we have included a table that provides information on the additional rates imposed by Washoe County and Clark County, respectively, on special fuels taxes. Section F provides information on a number of revenue sources that do not fall under any of the categories summarized under the subsections A to E. Some of these are pretty significant tax revenue sources, such as the insurance premium tax, the modified business taxes, business license fees, the live entertainment taxes, room taxes, and commerce tax, and you find that all under Section F. I'm turning now to Part 3, and I've already mentioned that this includes an account of all the tax and economic revenue-related changes enacted by each legislative session from 1979 onwards. Part 4 presents useful background information on taxation in Nevada. As mentioned, there's a glossary and a list of publications. Part 5 includes information on economic incentive programs, tax exemptions, abatements, deferrals, and tax credits. There are two additions and changes to this section when compared to previous reference manuals. The first concerns the new Marcus Job Act program on pages 335 and 337. This program is now accounted for in two separate sections, one for the program enacted during the 2019 session and one for the tax credit approved during the 2023 session. There's also an addition here concerning SB 1 of the 35th special session, namely the transferable tax credit and other program for the Major League Baseball Stadium project that was approved during the special session during the special session in summer of 2023. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Members, any questions? I have some outstanding stuff that I just want to put out there that I want to know. So on page 328, which is the commerce tax, and if you guys know this offhand, it's one of the deductions in sub 9, which are the healthcare provider deductions. So they are deducting payments from Medicaid, Medicare, CHIP, professional services related to workers' comp, the actual cost to the healthcare provider for any uncompensated care provided by the healthcare provider. And so I'm just super curious, right? Like, I was here in 2015 when we did the commerce tax, and I think it might have been a 5-hour hearing of awesome. And I mean, we went through a lot of the deductions, and I remember just, I know I focus a lot more on hedge funds and different pass-throughs that were happening. But this one is now of curiosity to me because I really want to get more information on sub 9. Like what is really in that deduction and what they're really not paying. Is it like a free ride for healthcare? Like, okay, I take that comment back. Any of the healthcare people listening, don't call me. But I want to know. All right, and I have a second question, but go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Nakamoto with the Fiscal Analysis Division for the record. As I was here in the 2015 session, I do recall many of those 5-hour hearings, and there were, I believe, more than one. Though I was not intimately involved in the discussions as your nonpartisan staff, I do recall there was a decision made as part of the passage of the commerce tax to exclude certain industries that may already be subject to another tax, one of which was the insurance industry. Some of the things that are discussed there, including Medicaid premiums, are subject to the insurance premium tax. And so I may not have the exact answer in terms of why this was done, but it may be that was tied to that decision to exclude insurance premiums, which are already subject to the insurance premium tax, which is in essence a gross receipts tax as well, just to avoid the double taxation on it. In terms of the scope or how that is administered by the Department of Taxation, that is something we would have to reach out to them to get the information on.
Senator Donyate.
Thank you, Chair. I have more of a logistical question. So I know that there's a section of this manual that deals with tax exemptions, and I mean, there's a whole list of a bunch of them that have different types of exemptions. Do we, by any chance, have the resources already in place, or maybe this is data that we already have, of how many people are applying for such exemptions and what the quantification of certain exemptions are? So, for example, LAT. This is a conversation that continuously comes up. If we wanted to see how many institutions are applying for the exemption, like, are we able to quantify for some of these?
Thank you for the question, Senator Donyate. Michael Nakamoto with the Fiscal Analysis Division for the record. There is a statutory requirement for the Department of Taxation to release a report every 2 years, which is the tax expenditure report. So they have a statutory obligation to go and identify abatements, exemptions, exclusions, the things that you're talking about, and to the extent possible, determine how many taxpayers or people may be included or affected by that abatement, exclusion, exemption, as well as put some dollar numbers on the estimate of that. That is something, the Thursday meeting we have the Department of Taxation coming in, they may have that as a high level overview, but we can get you a copy of the tax expenditure report that I believe they just released in the fall, and we can provide that to you and to any member of the committee who is interested.
Okay. While we're adding, can we add, and I know I talked to you about this offline, but the Economic Development District that's in Story, I really want to know, I guess this is more probably a conversation for legal for Fernley. If 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 they have 9 years left out of the 20, are they still bonding for the infrastructure? Is there a way to go in and, if Tesla and that whole development is really not, if it's finished technically, meaning that they're not taking the credits anymore, is there a way to go in and take back some of the revenue that was being siphoned into that economic development district and then use it, like put it back into the general fund or put it back into the county? I mean, because I'd be interested to know, are they still, is there still any bonding on that infrastructure right now? And would it be affected if I was like, hey, yeah, there's 9 years left, but technically you just got clipped and I want this money back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Nakamoto with the Fiscal Analysis Division for the record. And as your fiscal staff, I believe you may have answered your own question with respect to conversations with the legal division about any of that.
Members, any questions? I'm always plotting. I'm always trying. Okay, Senator Danyate.
Thank you, Chair. I know that this manual talks about some of the history of certain taxes that have been passed in terms of what the state revenue projections are and what we've collected over time. Is there any reference point as to where Nevada stands for any of these taxes in comparison to, for example, if we're in the median or what other states charge for similar tax structures? However, is there a presentation or something that we can look back historically for some of these? So, for example, if we're charging 90 mils for a cigarette, is there a do we have for specifically the cigarette tax, or just, I'm just using as an example, in comparison to what other states are charging for similar ways? Do we do that for other taxes or other revenue sources, or is that a resource that we have the ability to do so?
Thank you, Senator Donyate. Michael Nakamoto for the record. There are people that we would look to who have done analysis like that, comparisons. For example, cigarette tax is a really good one. Trying to remember, I think it's the Tax Foundation does put together a list of what the per pack cigarette tax is among all of the states. I know in Nevada we're kind of in the mid-range compared to some of the more western states. California and Nevada, for the longest time, were actually very close to each other, but they have instituted a number of increases that have taken themselves a couple of dollars a pack higher than us. But in terms of other states, I think we're in line. But that information, it's not something that Fiscal has necessarily put together, but there are people who are out there who have put things together like that for sales tax, property tax, some of the excise taxes like cigarettes and liquor and things like that. And so if there's anything that you're interested in, that's something that we can look into and get that information for you.
Senator Stone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a newbie on this committee, I see that sales tax is our largest revenue generator. A lot of folks are buying a lot of their products online, and I know we have agreements with big companies like Amazon and making sure that the state of Nevada gets a fair share of sales tax. How diligent do you think we are in making sure that we're trying to capture as much of that online tax revenue that we're entitled to that we're not getting?
Thank you, Senator Stone. Michael Nakamoto with the Fiscal Analysis Division for the record. As your nonpartisan staff who is on the legislative side, that's kind of a tricky question for us to answer. I do know that the legislature has been very diligent in past sessions, especially after the South Dakota versus Wayfair Supreme Court decision, in enacting regulations, passing legislation that is intended to capture a lot of those sales that were online that were simply missed. Including legislation passed during the 2019 session dealing with so-called marketplace facilitators. That was a bill of the chair's when she was still in the assembly to pick up not only the sales specifically through third parties who sell through larger venues, so like the Amazon Marketplace. There was a host of legislation, and I do know from my research that we are picking up a lot of revenues in that fashion, as well as the people who are not the marketplace facilitators, but who are just selling things within Nevada. That it has greatly benefited the state. As to whether the Department of Taxation could be doing a better job in finding these people and enforcing the laws, I don't think I'm in a position to judge that. And that may be a question for them when they're here on Thursday, of how well they think they're doing with respect to that, because I know there are always enforcement issues with taxes, but they may have better insight on how well they think they're doing with respect to that than I believe I do. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, when Department of Tax comes, it'll be a good time to ask them, like, who's all in the bucket. You know, are they picking up DoorDash? Are they picking up Instacart? Like, who's in and who's out, who was added? I just realized on page 268, there's a report I've never seen, and clearly it relates to one of my housing bills that will come to this committee. This fair, Mr. Nakamoto, have you seen this fair market rents report that's under the NAC? Because I'm now I have to read it. And it seems to have some very interesting information. Have you ever read that?
Madam Chair, I don't see anybody from the Department of Taxation here to correct me. My understanding of this report is that it is, under the property tax law, there are the three types of partial abatements that are granted. There's the 3% cap that is for single-family owner-occupied properties. There is the between 0 and 8% cap that applies to anybody who doesn't get a 3% cap. But this one, I believe, refers to the 3% cap that is given to single-family properties that are rented out, where the fair market rent or the rent that is being paid to the tenant is at or below what is called the fair market rent for that county, as determined by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. My understanding is this report is basically establishing what that fair market rent is for each county, so that it can be used as the threshold to determine whether a property is eligible for the 3% cap, or whether it is subject to the alternative cap between 0 and 8%.
Okay, that's good stuff. That's a must read. All right, any additional questions? Senator Dinyate.
Thank you, Chair. One last thing. I know we were talking about the exemptions earlier. I think you're going to be working on qualifying them. The one thing that I did not mention was the sales tax exemptions. If we can quantify some of them as you guys are going through that.
Senator Donyate, Michael Nakamoto for the record. The tax expenditure report that I referred to is comprehensive and will include information about the sales tax exemptions to the extent that the Department of Taxation, through their analysis, was able to determine any estimates on them.
Okay, you guys. To me, this is a fun committee. But if you really, really get into this book, it's awesome.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Can I provide just some final comments before we wrap this up?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Again, for the record, Michael Nakamoto with the Fiscal Analysis Division. And Mr. Tower made some comments that I was going to make, and that's okay that he did that. There's a lot of information in this Revenue Reference Manual, as the chair just pointed out, and it is something that we work on very diligently every interim, and we regularly are updating it and providing new information. One of the things that I would first note is my appreciation again to the staff at the Department of Taxation, who was very helpful in assisting us, especially with that publications section that the chair mentioned. And then there were a couple of other things that they also assisted with. One of the things that we are looking at, though, and I just want to have it on all of your radars as you're going through this, is this document is it is a long-standing document within the Fiscal Analysis Division. For those of you who have seen this document before, the cover is brand new. This is the first significant change, I think, that has been made to this document since probably the early to mid-'80s. What we do is we update it, but it has grown bigger. My first session in LCB Fiscal, the 2007 Revenue Reference Manual, I had to go look it up, was 170 pages. This time, the last page is page 371. So one of the things that is on my list of things to do for the interim, because we always have a list of things to do during the interim, is to try and modernize and streamline this document to get more useful information, to make it more user-friendly, to make it be something that is useful to you as legislators, but also for your constituents, because this document is available on our website, and also for anybody else who may want to look at this as a guide for taxation and revenue. So as you're going through, I've thought about it and I have some ideas of things that we may want to do. But if you are going through and there are things that you see in here that you like, that you want expanded on, that you think could be done differently, that you don't like, please let us know. It doesn't have to be today or tomorrow. It can be any time during session or even during the interim. Please reach out to us. And again, if you're going through this and if you have questions, we are your nonpartisan staff dealing with revenue and taxation. We can assist you to the best of our ability. If we cannot get you the answer or we don't have the answer, we can get it for you. But this is something that is a labor of love for us. But at the same time, because a lot of this still is in the same form as it was during the 80s, we're kind of looking at ways to improve it as opposed to just putting a brand new cover on it. So again, thank you for that, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Nakamoto. All right, you guys, so we will close out the discussion on the Revenue Reference Manual. Keep it. I have kept several copies except for the 23-24, which Mr. Nakamoto had to send to me so I could have my fall reading. We will now move into the overview of what happened in the interim in the Joint Standing Committee on Revenue during the last interim. Mr. Nakamoto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Michael Nakamoto with the Fiscal Analysis Division. In addition to our duties as your staff for the revenue committees during session, we are also staff to the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Revenue, which was created pursuant to NRS 218E.320. This section of NRS was approved by the legislature in Assembly Bill 443 of the 2021 session and basically organized interim committees that look and function similarly to the standing committees during a legislative session. And so on page III, we have the statutory citation, and you can see all of the interim standing committees that are listed there, and the last one is revenue. And so the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Revenue did meet 5 times during the 2023 interim. The members are listed on just inside the front cover. The senator or the chair of this committee was the vice chair of the Revenue JISC. That alternates going back and forth. Senator Donyate was also on the committee, as well as former Senator Severs O'Gara, who was on this committee during the regular session last session, as well as Senator Buck and former Senator Spearman, who were also on this committee last time, who served as alternates. The committee was chaired by the chair of Assembly Revenue, Assemblymember Shea Backus, and during the interim, there were a number of meetings. There were, in fact, 5 meetings that were held with presentations by a number of state agencies, including the Office of Economic Development, the Department of Taxation, the Department of Business and Industry, the Office of Workforce Innovation, as well as some external presentations from the National Conference on State Legislatures, otherwise known as NCSL. And I will give them a shout out now as thanks for and our appreciation for their assistance in providing information to the committee with respect to a number of topics at the request of the chair and the vice chair. The provisions of NRS 218E.320 allow for the drafting of measures to be sponsored by the joint interim standing committees, up to 10 for most of the GISCs. At the work session on August 27th, there was a work session held, and the committee considered 3 proposals for potential bill draft requests, and those all 3 of those were approved. And there is a summary of all of those recommendations on starting on page 5 of the bulletin. And I'm not going to go into a huge discussion of those, but the information is there for you. The BDR numbers for those are 418, 419, and 420, and they have not yet been drafted to my knowledge. But Madam Chair, I didn't have a whole lot to go through on this other than to present the bulletin and provide the information. But if there are any questions regarding the interim standing committee, I would be glad to answer them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Members, any questions on the interim revenue GISC? Seeing no questions, that was majority of our business for today. So what I will do is open up for public comment. Is there anyone here for public comment? Seeing no one coming up, is there anyone online for public comment on the telephone?
Thank you, Chair Neal. The public line is open and working. However, there are no callers at this time.
All right, so that concludes our business. Is there anyone down in Vegas? That room is empty. So that concludes our business, and we will see you on Thursday. We are going to adjourn Senate revenue.